thank you all for joining us. I'll go ahead and ask Pete to go ahead and start off and introduce himself.
Okay, excellent. I'm assuming I can come. I'm coming through okay with the not muted. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm very happy to be here. My name is Peter Atherton. I'm a professional civil engineer, and I've worked through the ranks for the first 24 years of my career. Started as a project engineer at a large engineering firm in Boston. I was there for about 5 years as a sort of a staff engineer and a project engineer until I got my license. And then I moved to a small mid-sized firm in New England and quickly rose through the ranks as a lead project engineer, project manager, team leader, principal in charge, and then to a practice group leader, and served more than half of my career as a major owner of that firm and on the board of directors. And so being a Gen Xer, I began my career in a recession in the 1990s and then worked through the dot-com recession and the Great Recession, and now helping firms manage through the COVID downturn. And so for the last few years, I've been a management consultant for engineering firms, doing strategic planning, leadership and management development, employee engagement, corporate impact design. I have a leadership mastermind group and host a AEC leadership podcast.
You're muted.
Thank you. Thank you, Pete. Robin, can you introduce yourself next?
I'd be happy to. Thank you so much for having me today. It's truly a pleasure and an honor to be here. I have a little bit of diverse experience, not yes and no, if you want to consider it, because I have over 35 years as a design engineer in structural engineering in building design. When I first got married and graduated with my master's, I was in Kentucky. I got a job with Bechtel. I hit my first recession, but we're talking about 1980 with President Reagan. So I ended up going to Midland, Michigan for a year on the site. It was the nuclear power plant that never went nuclear, and it was the only way to keep a job. I was only it was 18 months into my career and actually into my marriage, and my husband could not come with me because he was getting his doctorate in Kentucky. So we were separated after 18 months. This is something, if you are have a significant partner, if you have family, you maybe ended up working separately, or you have to make these kinds of decisions. Got laid off the first time, one of three, and made my work back to Kentucky. I was with the Army Corps for 6 months and then moved to New Jersey because that's where my husband had gotten his first job as a PhD. So I started with a consulting firm and in structural engineering. After so many years, I forget now how many, maybe around 8-ish. Next recession, we ended up merging with another firm. So it was a multidiscipline engineering firm, and I was 20 years with them alone. So I had a pretty long run. I had well over 20 years essentially with the same company, but I knew I needed a change. We had another recession. Things were happening. My next layoff, I end up 14 months with a forensic consulting company. They were out of Texas. I was in New Jersey. This was right after Superstorm Sandy. Guess what I was doing? Going out and about and looking at all the damage by Superstorm Sandy. And then I landed, I got laid off again 14 months later and landed with Zurich, North America, which is an insurance company. As I said, I wanted a change in career, and this has been great. I'm a risk engineer. As my colleague says, we get paid to give our opinion. So this is a great venue for me because I'm full of them. So hopefully this will be my life experience will be of help to others. And also, I currently am the past president of ASCE. This is my 3rd year as a presidential officer. It's been an incredible honor and journey and trip, and I hope to continue on somehow past the presidency with ASCE and the profession. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Robin. We look forward to hearing your opinions today.
I'm not going to pay for them today, am I? Oh, excuse me.
You're not. We'll send you the check later.
Thank you.
Carol, can you go ahead and introduce yourself next?
Yes. Hi, I'm Carol Martzoff. I'm a professional engineer, and I'm now a Chief Learning Officer for Urban Engineers. So midway through my career, I took a pivot. So I was a practicing civil engineer and project manager. And then I guess it's about 12 years ago now, I made a pivot into learning and development for civil engineers. And I'm a Region 2 governor. I'm a past president of the Philadelphia section, and I am vice chair of Mosaic, which is the Members of Society Advancing Inclusive Culture. I have about 27 years of experience total.
Thank you so much for joining us. Joanna, can you go ahead and introduce yourself next?
Sure. Hey, everybody. How's it going? Happy, what is it, Thursday? Are you counting? My name is Joanna Smith. I'm a geotechnical engineer over at AECOM. And I've been with AECOM for about 5 years. So I'm a powerful young baby of the group here. And I'm really excited to be here amongst such amazing people. While at AECOM, I've had the ability to work on various projects from rail to air to roadways, infrastructure. And right now I'm leading the Hunts Point geotechnical aspect of this project. It's about a $1.9 billion project. So it's lots of money, lots of clients, many different stakeholders. In addition to engineering, I'm also a musician. I am a pianist. I'm so excited. I see Robin Kemper over here. When she started as the president of ASCE, I had the honor to play for her and her dad and everyone else who was at that party. And so I'm going to speak a little bit about that, about how we use, the gifts that we have as well within engineering and within the sciences and the arts to move our career forward. And I just really hope that everyone digs in and really looks forward, to this conversation and just being their best selves, not only today, but moving forward from all that we're going to hear from everyone here. So begin with the end in mind.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Joanne. I really look forward to hearing all of your perspectives. So I'll go ahead and start with our kickoff question. Again, a reminder, please share any questions that you have in the chat box. We really want to hear from you. This is a great topic. We have a great panel, so I'm sure they are eager to answer your questions, so please ask them in the chat box. But first, our kickoff question: with many employers laying off workers or putting a freeze on hiring and promotions, what advice would you give to engineers who are trying to keep their career plan on track during this difficult and uncertain time? Pete, can we go ahead and get your perspective on this first?
Absolutely. So, obviously, this is very much a time of crisis, and it's a period of change. And so, speaking at it from a supervisor, leader, firm owner perspective, when these challenging times come, it's hard. And if we're in a position of having to let go staff, not being able to find enough work, and looking at freezes, it is hard for us. Nobody wants to do these things. Some of the hardest things I've ever had to do as a leader and firm owner is to let people go. It's just hard. In this industry, we are generally very nice people, and we care about the environment and the built infrastructure, and we care about the people. So it is a very trying time. That being said, as an employee, recognize that it is a trying time and look to maximize the value you can. Internally, what does your boss need? What does the client need? I think that's very important to understand, that even if you're stressed, your boss might be more stressed. And so if you can be an aid, that's something that will work in your favor, because in good times and challenging times, you want to be seen as loyal and hungry. And promotions and opportunities in the AEC space, they're not linear. And so there might be a time we cannot promote, we cannot give those opportunities. But if you are sort of the cream that rises to the top, if you're seen as a solution, if you're seen as someone who we can rely on, those opportunities will come, and they'll come at an accelerated pace. And I'll just end with that and let the other panelists talk.
Awesome. Robin, do you want to go ahead and share your perspective?
Sure. First and foremost, this is not a time to panic. Just take a deep breath and consider this uncertain time as a golden opportunity to review, reflect, and prepare. I've been, like I said, I've been laid off 3 times, and in each time when I got to my next position, it set me up for the next one and the next one. You're going to find change. You got to be flexible. It's a great time to update your resume and evaluate what you want to do. And when you look at that resume, are there any holes in it? See if there's something else that you should be focusing on to fill in those holes, whether it's training, certifications, a degree program, or anything else like that. Even as Joanna was saying, some of your other skills you can bring. Music's a beautiful thing. Maybe there's something that you love in that you can bring to the table. As Pete was saying, what can you do to help your organization? And don't be afraid to make suggestions. Look at it. Even you may be, I'm the boomer here. I'm the elderly one here, okay? But it takes all of us, and we need ideas from everybody to help make our organization successful. And as a member of ASCE, especially as an active member, there's much you can bring to your organization that you have learned and experienced through ASCE. And don't forget your mentors, whether they're internal, external, they're not necessarily even in civil engineering, and find out what they're doing and get their opinion and, bounce ideas off of them. So I'm going to leave it there, and let's hear from the next one, please.
Awesome. That's great advice. Carol, what advice would you give someone right now?
I want to piggyback a little bit on something that Pete had said. And he said that your career is not necessarily linear. And that's definitely how it's been for me. It has not been linear. In fact, if there's one thing that I hope everyone can take away from this, is that like your career is pretty much like a jungle gym. And that's how it's been for me. You're just like on one part of the jungle gym, and maybe the next part is like this way, or maybe it's this way, or maybe it's laterally. So don't think of these times as like on the linear track. Like this time does not necessarily have to mean that your career has to be sidetracked at all. And then also make sure you're always communicating your value. Like just don't forget to do that. And that's what's harder about this time, because it's not like you can walk by your manager's office and say, hey, can I have a few minutes with you? You need to make sure you're keeping the communication lines open and constantly showing what your value is. So I would say that that's the advice I would give.
I love that analogy of the jungle gym. That's great. Thank you. Joanna, I'll go ahead and turn to you next. What advice would you give to someone?
Yeah, I really just want to echo what everyone said earlier, but I also think it's very important, as we do know, we need to update our resumes. LinkedIn is definitely an amazing tool. It's not necessarily Facebook, but it is pretty much the Facebook of the corporate entity, right? And so I think it's important to just sit down and have a virtual coffee with somebody. I think right now a lot of people, as you guys are, I'm happy to see everyone's face. Sometimes it's just really great to, to slide into a DM and say, hey, my name is so-and-so. I just want to know a little bit about what's going on, within your company. So I think it's very important to use the resources that you have. At this time, as Robin said earlier, it's time to really sit and reflect, I think. And in that reflecting period of time, what happens is that you start to recognize a little bit more of your strengths, and you start to recognize your successes. And I think that's very important, because at this time it's hard to get down on yourself if you're in a space of unemployment, or if you're in a space where you thought that you would have been at a different level, most likely higher than where you are. So really reflect, and time to kind of like strategize and say, hey, what are my strengths? What am I really great at? What do I want to be better at? And what's the need right now within the work atmosphere, whether for my boss, and I really like what Peter said in terms of really speaking to your boss necessarily being stressed at this time. How can you offset that? Or what needs and how can you add value? As Carol mentioned, what value are you able to add to the situation? And for me, the linearity of things is very interesting, because a lot of the times as a younger person, 5 years in, you're like, yeah, I need to be here. And then you're not there. And you're like, whoa, what's happening here? But recognizing this jungle gym experience, which I love that term, we put it in quotes now. It really allows you to recognize that the successes that you had before, you can do the same thing within engineering, within a different sector. And I think Robin kind of spoke to jumping around in terms of going into risk and being civil engineering and starting here and there. Peter has his own firm and something else now, so it's really amazing to kind of see that we're not just speaking just to speak, but it's actually being done, and we've been successful at it. So that's just my piece there. Yeah.
No, that's great. Thank you. That's awesome. Wonderful, wonderful feedback. And, I think that jungle gym analogy really does play into that question that we have in the chat box here. I feel stuck doing boring work and not growing. How do you decide to stay in the same industry or pivot to something else? Robin, I know you've already talked about this a little bit. Do you want to go ahead and answer that question?
Well, I was at a crossroads about really 10 years ago. That's when I just knew I wanted to be president of ASCE, and the company I've been with for 20 years, they were not able to support me. So there were two things going on. One, also being 35 years in consulting, I knew I needed a change. So I started to look around to figure out, what did I want to do? What did I like doing? What did I like doing? How could I cobble it together to something that I want? It never occurred to me to leave the field. It's such a broad-based field, and we need everybody. We need everybody who has gone through the dedication of college and whatever training you've had since in your career. But that's where the mentors can come in. That's where ASC and other organizations come in. They really have opened my eyes up to all different aspects of the profession, and to help me get through the hard times. And for me, also, like, ASC is my big organization. And when I wasn't happy, when I was bored, I've had those periods. ASC helped me through it, because that's where my passion was at the moment. And then things turned around at work. But nobody is going to care about your career more than you will. So you have to take ownership. You have to take responsibility. But there's a lot of people and programs and other things out there that can help you along the way.
Absolutely. Pete, did you have anything to add to that?
I can. So from the perspective of a leader and one of the major owners in a firm, one thing, just kind of the work is boring. I want to make sure that, as younger engineers, certainly within the first 10 years of our career, we've got to master our craft. And until we become an expert at it, we're really not, we're not worth as much as if we know a little bit about things. So, we've just got to make sure we really master our craft. And if we've done things a couple of times, that doesn't mean we've been able to master it. So there is opportunities that even if you're doing something over and over, first of all, take responsibility to advise your supervisor that you might be wanting to have some other assignments. And that shows taking responsibility. And if you're looking for promotion, if you take responsibility with your career, that shows that you'll take responsibility likely with a project, you'll take responsibility with a client issue moving forward. So being able to advocate for yourself is key. But if you do something 2, 3, 4 times, it doesn't necessarily mean it's boring, or it could feel boring, but look at it as the opportunity to really master that craft and look for innovation. How can you do this? You've done this 4 times now, you've done this 5 times. How can you innovate? How can you use technology? Because that is golden within organizations for you to do that. So I guess I'll offer that perspective of it still could be an opportunity. And if it is truly boring and you're not seeing the growth, because you need to see the growth, I'd say it's a value to take responsibility, because that will just translate up throughout your career.
Absolutely. I know this has been a really difficult time, but I've been trying to wake up every day looking for those opportunities, right? With everything happening. Otherwise, it's easy to get down. So, Carol, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I agree with Robin. There were times in my career where I just felt like things were kind of stagnant, and I just kind of skyrocketed my ASCE involvement, and I was president of the Younger Member Forum, president of the section. And at times when I wasn't as satisfied as I would have liked to have been in my career, it was great to grow my leadership skills in ASCE, be involved in the community and things like that. But But if you're really bored, I would say two things. One, really analyze what it is that you're doing, and if this is really what you want to do. Maybe you're in transportation and you're doing roadways. Maybe you want to do transit, or maybe you want to do bike trails or something like that. So it's an opportunity to explore if you just want to do like something else within your discipline. And also definitely speak to your manager. If you're getting bored, maybe your manager has a recommendation for you, or talk to your mentors too. Yeah, I would say don't struggle within yourself. Like definitely like talk to other people.
No, that's great advice. A reminder, please, that was a great question. Please share any questions in the chat box. We'll love to get to them. The next question I'll ask is, how can engineers balance a right now mindset with planning for the future? How far should they think ahead? 5 to 10 year journey timeline. How can you merge your current skills with what you already do? So I'll go ahead and turn to Carol, I guess, next, and see if that's something that you can speak to.
Yes. So I would say, similar to what like Pete was saying, you should like take ownership for your career and think of yourself as like the CEO of yourself. You're the CEO, and like companies do strategic planning. They have like 5-year plans. So maybe just think like 5 years out, or like when I write business plans, it's every 2 years because I want to refresh my business plan every 2 years. So I would say a 2 to 5 year window, but I also want to say if you go any further than that, I know that I had absolutely no clue I would ever be a chief learning officer. I graduated with a bachelor's of science in civil engineering. I thought like I'll just have like this career as an engineer. I had no clue. And so if you plan too far ahead, you're not opening yourself up to unique opportunities that come up along the way. So I would say maybe like 2 to 5 years.
Absolutely. That's great advice. And I know Joanna kind of already mentioned that, is to not, not have such a stringent path for yourself, if you will. So, and it looks like we lost Joanna. Hopefully she'll be able to join us again. I'll go on and move to our next question. While we're all in crisis mode, what are some actions engineers can take right now to position themselves for a promotion? So Pete, is that something that you can speak to?
Sure, yes. So, I mean, I think it's been said, I mean, provide value. Find out where you can provide value, and really dive into that. It can be as simple as, this is the task that I'm doing. This is do I know that it's done? Not just done for supervisor review, but have I highlighted areas that I have questions on? So it's really about providing value. Maybe even after you turn in an assignment or a task, ask your supervisor, what else can you do? Like, make yourself available for that, because maybe there is something, maybe that opportunity is in that final question. I didn't just do what I was asked, but then I turned it in, I made it easier for the review, and I asked what else I could do. Kind of along the lines of what Carol was just saying. So, engage your supervisor in what's next. And what can you do to get ahead? Because there's a lot of busy and consumed with project managers and leaders, team leaders. And so if you take the time to engage, people like that. People like it when you take ownership. And as a busy leader, when someone said, can I have 10 minutes? I really want to be able to understand how I can get ahead, how I can serve you better, how I can serve the team, the clients better. That goes a long way, just taking that initiative and engaging that discussion.
Yeah, half the battle is initiative, right?
Absolutely. And it's a differentiator today. A lot of people assume or wait for the annual meeting, as far as performance review. If you engage, it makes a huge difference. And it amazed me as a leader in a firm how many people don't engage.
Absolutely. Carol, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, just piggybacking again on what Pete said, take initiative. If you see something that needs to be different, if you see one of your coworkers struggling, if you see your manager struggling, yeah, I think just taking initiative is one of the most important things you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. If there's any more questions in the chat box, please feel free to ask them. If you can't see the chat box, professional@asce.org. Please share questions. We love questions. But I'll move on to the next one that we have here. Can you share a time when you faced challenges or uncertainty in your career? You know, a lot of you have mentioned a recession already and getting through it. So, Robin, I'll turn to you first to see if you can talk about some of the things that you've done when you faced challenges in the past.
Well, after you brush yourself off, it's not easy. As Pete said in the beginning, laying someone off or being laid off, and it's been at least 3 times in my career it's happened. So again, you've got to look at every negative as a positive. You have to have that positive attitude. You have to be open to change. Carol hit it right on the head. If you're not open to what's going on around you, you may miss something that's very important or will be very important to you in the future. So you've got to be flexible and willing to make changes that will help you. Now, there are times you're going to have to put yourself a little bit back. You can't necessarily always be first. Again, if you're in a relationship, if you have family, you're always trying to balance everything. I always considered, I describe my life as the equilateral triangle. And at each one of the points are the most important things in my life. I've got my career, I have my family, I have ASCE, and it's constantly rotating. And whatever's at the apex is what I'm concentrating on at that moment. So these last 3 years have been ASCE, but now I'm a grandmother of 3. Guess what's coming up next? Family's going to get a lot more high priority as my duties come down. So those are the types of things you have to bring into that thought process of where you want to go next. Yes, that jungle gym analogy is a great one, because you don't know where you're going. When I was laid off the second time, I was almost 6 months, and I was, the third time, and I was going everywhere looking for it. And one of the places that was hiring was an insurance company, but it was to be a salesperson, for like life insurance or something. Like, really? But guess what? I'm working for an insurance company now. It's in construction property, it's in professional liability, and they definitely want engineers. But I would have never thought, just like Carol, you never really know where that turn's going to come. That's where you have to be open to things that can change. And like I keep saying, civil engineering as a profession is so broad-based and diverse that I can't imagine truly you not finding something that really inspires you. And anybody who knows me, I'm about the ask. You have to ask for what you want. And also, when someone asks you, when possible, say yes, even if it's something that's scary. I'll tell you, switching to doing risk engineering and other things, it's very scary. It doesn't matter what stage your career in, no matter how much of an expert you're in, there's always something to learn. So just be willing, and it's hard. It's very hard, but willing to put yourself out there, because that's how you're going to reap all the benefits. You're on mute.
You know what? I think I'm being so polite by muting myself, and then I forget to turn it off, and I feel like I might as well just keep it off. Pete, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
I'd say, I mean, there's not. I know that there's some questions in the chat, but I think what Robin said was just great advice. I don't know that I had anything specific to add. Be aware of the surroundings and the opportunities. I mean, every threat, every impact is an opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and get to our chat box. While transitioning, it becomes difficult to justify why you want to do something different, especially when one lacks experience. So how should we convince or navigate through this? So, Carol, is that something maybe that you could speak to?
Yeah. Well, first of all, if you want to have some kind of transition, maybe figure out the why behind it. Let's just say you're doing one kind of engineering and you want to pivot to another kind, and you don't have any experience in that other kind. Maybe you have some other value to lend to it that will help you get there. Like, let's just say you're in transportation and you want to go to environmental, let's just say, and let's just say you're involved in a lot of environmental groups. Let's just say you're involved in the Environmental Advisory Council for your town, and you're actively involved and you have a lot of passion. So even though you don't have any experience in it, you're showing your value and that you have a passion for it and that you have an understanding of it and knowledge of it. So find the why, and then find other reasons besides experience that will help you make that transition. So again, first, make sure it's really something you want to do, and find out your why. And then secondly, what else within your life can you tie to it to show value that has nothing to do with your experience? So I would say like that would be my advice there.
That's great advice. Joanna, welcome back. I see you.
Thank
found
you.
us again. So this actually, the question that I just asked, which I don't know if you caught it or not, but I'll read it again. I think this might be something that you could also speak to from a very practical standpoint. So while transitioning, it becomes difficult to justify why you want to do something different, especially when one lacks experience. So how should we convince or navigate through this? Is that something that you've dealt with before?
In terms of lacking experience, so as I say, like usually my motto for life is begin with the end in mind. I think it's important for you to recognize your skill set. And when I say skill set, I mean just different aspects of your character that you bring to the table. So in engineering, we know that there are many difficult problems that we have to solve, which means that most likely you're a resilient person, right? Which means that you have the ability to bounce back when something hits you and you don't really get it, but you're going to kind of channel through it. The only way is through, right? That's like the Nike commercial now. And so I think that really and truly, it's really about speaking to those strengths and the ability and the capacity to do beyond what you think you can do. And so I really think pulling on your skill set of resilience, your skill set to be able to learn anything. A lot of my friends say if you're an engineer, you can be anything, right? Really, it's a synthesis and analysis of whatever you're dealing with. And so I think just kind of using that in the most simple terms really allows you to move to the next level within whatever it is that you may think that you don't have experience in. We do a lot of reading, lots of articles, lots of journal entries. If we need to find out something about an expansive soil, we're going to listen and read as many documents as we can. And so reading and asking the right people the questions that you would like to find out information from. LinkedIn, as we spoke about, is an amazing resource. The mentor that you have, as we spoke about, as well, is an amazing resource. And so I'm going to leave it there because I can really speak on that. So, just trust yourself, trust your perseverance, your ability to bounce back, and your ability to learn, and just know that you can jump in on anything that you would like to, especially that you have an engineering degree.
That's awesome. That's great advice. Confidence is so important, right? So this is a great question. I think a lot of people probably have the same question. Does anyone have advice for recent grads or seniors looking for a job during this uncertain time? Carol, I'll turn to you first on this one.
Sure. I would say, just like if this weren't this kind of like COVID crisis time, I would say like your network means a lot. So I'll tell you a quick story. So when I graduated from Temple University, it was not a good time to graduate because like it was hard to get a job. Just like Pete was saying, like I'm a Generation X and I graduated when like it wasn't like the best time to graduate. And but I got my job because I contacted the president of the Philadelphia section at the time. And I said, gosh, I just graduated and it's tough. Like, is there any way that maybe you could give me advice? So he said, yeah. He said, like, come to the next meeting and I'll introduce you around. So he introduced me to all of these people. And that's how I got my first job. I spoke to someone who was working at Parsons Brinckerhoff. It's now WSP, but yeah. And believe it or not, that was a company that I had sent my resume to months earlier, got no response. But I guess when you network, it happens, right? So you try to network around this time. It's kind of harder, but I would say you still need a strong network, even at this time. So I would say, there are still presidents of the sections. So reach out to the president of your section, explain your situation, and I'm sure like that person will help you. So I would say like reach out to your ASCE leadership and probably something good will come out of that.
That's great advice. And I'll shout out to the Philadelphia section. I didn't realize that you were a member of the Philadelphia section, but they're just a great group. Anyone they're awesome. Every person from the Philadelphia section is just phenomenal. So if there's anyone that needs networking opportunities in Philadelphia, that's the place to go.
Yes.
Awesome. Pete, did you have any advice?
I do. I love what Carol said. Networking. I mean, LinkedIn is phenomenal that it exists today. It certainly, obviously, didn't exist back then. But I think if you've been contacted, if you're in the interview process with firm X and/or firm Y, follow them on LinkedIn. If they have newsletter articles, follow those, like those. I mean, everything authentic. But if you really stay engaged with the company that way, you're up. If you get that call to come in for an interview on Skype or whatever, you're in line. You have the up-to-date information. So I would definitely leverage LinkedIn and social media and where your friends are at. As far as where they're landed, and find out what's going on in different industries. Because the fact is, I mean, there is still a ton of work out there for the civil engineers, engineers in general, but civil engineers in particular. This is a temporary thing, unless you're in certain subsections of the industry. So you are in high demand. One of the things that really stands out during these periods, whether it be recessions or what's going on now, is what are you doing in the meantime? So right now, you could take classes at Harvard and Yale and all the Ivy League schools, and so many schools for free. I have in Harvard for $50. You can have, I'm taking these classes. That stands out. So few people are doing that comparatively. And I was talking to one firm leader who I do work with. They were going to do a freeze, and they actually stopped and they moved ahead with somebody who, number one, was taking those types of classes. And they decided in the meantime, they're selling Cutco knives because they want to enhance their sales skills and provide some income in the meantime. So it's really stay in touch and figure out how can you differentiate right now. That's just going to raise somebody's eyebrows to say, I need her, I need him.
I'd like to just chime in for just a quick sec, just two quick things. First of all, finding a job. Don't forget, I got laid off 14 months apart. So I was looking 14 months apart looking for a new position. It's a full-time career. And like you said, excellent advice, Pete. Keep doing whatever you can to keep your skills up, learn new skills, et cetera, in the meantime. But if you do see things posted, don't let it scare you off saying, well, I don't have this experience. I don't have that. What I learned over that period was what you see posted is the perfect person. And that employer probably will never get that person with all those skills. So if it interests you, that position, even if it's way above you, maybe there's something similar that's going to be a little bit lower. Don't let anything scare you off. Make those connections through LinkedIn, make them through anybody else you can. Try and get an introduction. But that's really, it takes a lot of work. So don't get disappointed. Don't get put off. But also don't be scared off by what's written. You write your own job description and let people know about it. Thank you.
I love that advice, Robin. That's great. I think this kind of pertains, I'm a little bit interested in a comment that Joanna had made earlier about sliding into DMs. I'm wondering, Joanna, if you had any very practical experience of how that might help assist you in looking for a job during these times as a recent graduate.
Yeah.
Joanna, you're breaking up a little. Joanna, you're breaking up a little bit. Maybe you can leave and come back.
No.
Joanna, are you there? Oh, there we go. She's going to leave. Hopefully she'll be able to come back, and hopefully we can get her thoughts on that. So the next question is, Pete offers great advice asking your company leaders how you can help. What advice do panelists have if your company leaders are not open to those types of questions? Carol, is that something that you might want to talk about?
Yes. Well, if you're working for whether it's a government agency or for a consultant, those leaders have their whys. So if you're working for a consultant, it's probably revenue generation, or one of the whys is revenue generation. If you work for a government agency, one of them may be for doing things for the public good or something. So if you tap into the whys of your leadership, they will listen to you, and they will want to listen to you. It's just maybe you're not tapping into their why. And regardless if you're tapping into what their why is, they should be listening to you. But if they're not, if you find their why, they will listen to you. If you let's just say they're really focused on revenue generation, and you've discovered that, I don't know, the city that you live in is going to have an RFP coming out and whatever, if you say that, they'll be all ears and they'll want to listen to you. So if you tap into their why, then I think they will listen to you.
Yeah, that's great advice. Pete, did you have anything to add?
Well, yes. I mean, I guess I love Carol's response with the why. But I think if there is a particular supervisor who just is closed off at this time, I mean, there's typically mentors in the organization, there's their peers, and without going around, but you could go sideways and find out from your peers who's good to talk to, who's good to have those conversations, because maybe it's not your immediate boss, but there's someone in that organization. Even if your immediate supervisor seems closed off or is going through a busy season or whatever, I think finding someone in that organization to have conversations with, from even just a mentor, non-specific perspective, you could be able to understand a little bit more and find out, do you not have clarity? Is your boss really, the holdup? I mean, really just get clarity around the situation, but being able to talk to someone at your supervisor's peer level is a good way to be able to break through and just sort of get clarity on your opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. Joanna, welcome back. I was anxiously awaiting your reply, so I think we can go back and see if you had anything to share about using DMs to find a job during the pandemic.
Definitely. So I know that everyone here most likely knows what a DM is, but it's the direct mail. But I've definitely been in situations where, especially coming out of school, I was really trying to get a position within my field. There are a lot of engineers that start in geotech or civil, and they don't necessarily land a job in their field, and I didn't want to be that statistic. And so what I did my homework. I was looking at different positions at different companies that were doing the same thing that I wanted to do, especially geotech aspects of work. And I just really made a list, like everyone said, make your list. And I really just continue to make connections with people through LinkedIn. And I just continue to do that day after day. And it's almost like, the fish and the hook. Something has to bite, right? And so there were many opportunities that were afforded me because of that. And so, I would say just continue to speak to people. Right now, as I said previously, it is a time for virtual coffee. Talk to somebody, and there are different connections. My outlook on finding a position or looking for opportunities, really that you have to believe that it's there, and it's there. And as you continue to seek, you will find it. And so I think that's just very important, just not to get discouraged at this time, but to continue to make those connections, continue to speak with different people, and just know that the position that you want is really there. And as you continue to search for it, you will find it.
Absolutely. So I'll move on to the next question that we have in the chat box. We probably have time for one or two more, so please feel free to continue to share any questions that you have. But This one is feeling less opportunity during this difficult time because most of the government and educational organizations are cutting off or reducing their number of fellowships. Is that something, Carol, it looks like maybe you have something to weigh in there?
I probably don't for that question, actually. I'm probably not the best one for that one.
It looked like you were very reflective.
I was trying to figure out if I did know something, and I don't.
Okay. Robin, did you have anything to add?
It's a little, there's always good times and bad times. I mean, it's just, we're very cyclical. You just have to weather them. We started talking about, how do you differentiate yourself? If there are less positions, how do you do it? One of the things I would say, find your passions and build on them. At times you'll need to learn things that really don't excite you, but find out what you are learning can really help you throughout your career in life. I come from a background where education is core to our culture, if not revered. So anything you learn is of value, whether it's a single seminar, whether it's this kind of discussion, a course, getting a master's, PhD, anything and everything you learn helps mold you and help you find your path through life where you want to go. There's a lot of specific training one can do. You may want to focus on that. It could be on the technical side, as Pete said, especially when you're young. Learning, you have to really learn your craft to become somewhat of an expert in what you're doing. Even if you're in a broad-based field, you got to be an expert in those areas. So now's a great time to add to what you've learned. Again, like I said before, do not be afraid to go after something, even if there's very little there. You've just got to hit on that right note with whomever you're communicating with and grasp their interest. And sometimes it's like what Joanna does, playing the piano. Maybe you have something common there. Maybe it has to do with pets. There are all sorts of ways. You just have to learn how to listen very carefully to use that information to know how to respond. And read. Never stop reading. My current role, I never read regularly Engineering News Record. We got it in the office, but they said, it's a good thing to read. I read it now cover to cover. And I just found a little article here and there, and I shared it. That's the kind of thing. You might find something and share it. It could be books. It could be something. It could be business skills. It can be soft skills. It can be anything, because it all makes who you are. But just most importantly, be true to yourself and be genuine. And if that comes through, that will get you a very long way to where you want to be.
Yeah, that's great.
So I just wanted to add, when you were kind of mentioning fellowships, I mean, in my mind, I was thinking the monetary aspect of things. So I'm going to speak a little bit to that. I know that right now, due to the climate, diversity is a very major perspective that we need to take on. And I think, as you look at your skill set, like mine is playing the piano. What I did during this time, I mean, work is flowing very well, but because I am home and I'm able to reflect a little bit more of how engineering and math come together, now I've started my own company by saying, wow, STEM is very important, especially in the diversity aspect of things right now. It has always been, but it's something where a lot of our corporate companies are ready to invest in. Right? They were doing it before, but I think that now the climate has really called for more monies, more resources, more funding, more thought process, through this. And so if you have a skill set, whatever it might be, as if you're an engineer, then that means you know how to teach. I'm a geotechnical engineer. There might be some 4-year-olds or 6-year-olds that look like me or don't look like me that really need to understand what that means. And so I'm already planting that seed at that age group so that I'm creating the pipeline effect for them, not just now, but then they can be leaders within their companies or within corporate America. And so it's important for us to kind of also see what's the need of the climate, not only within the engineering sector, but for the market worldwide, and how can we use our skill set to teach or to encourage. Instagram is 1 minute on Instagram. If you're on Instagram, say something real quick. Hey, I'm a geotechnical engineer. This is what a soil looks like. This is what a clay looks like. Tune in next week for another. It's small stuff like that. And from there, I think that you're able to kind of tap into the market that the companies do want to spend, in, and they do want to be a part of that because it looks good. Not only to attach your name to that, but also to recognize that you are changing generations forever, really. So, I think that right now, as Robin said, there are the positive sides and there are the negative sides. So where things might seem like, they're being reduced, there's the one door closes, another one opens. And so I think, being aware and seeing what you can do within that spectrum will really help you, get the resources that you need at this time.
If I could throw one more perspective on this, there's the sort of the government and the organizations may be cutting back. I mean, there's a lot of macro trends out there. COVID is a macro. I mean, there are some, changes back in the Great Recession, the housing was going down. Really, from a firm perspective, from a location perspective, the macro trends, you need to be aware of those, but it's really the microcosm of what's going on. I mean, there are some organizations that are still getting grants and there's still fellowships giving. You just got to figure out where they are and what specifically is happening, because even in certain locations where the macro forces are taking hold, it creates opportunities in others. So be aware of the macro cycles, but the money and the opportunity is in what's happening on a local level or in specific disciplines within our field.
Absolutely. That's great advice. I mean, like Joanna said, one door closes, another one opens, right? Like it's just finding out where you can capitalize on the opportunity. So I think we have time probably for one more question. Let's talk a little bit about advanced education, training, or certifications that could possibly position you for a better position across your career. What recommendations would you all have on additional training? I'll go ahead and turn to Robin first.
Okay, well, I talked a bit about this before, but I'm going to focus on something that I think is certainly very important in today's world with climate change and needing resiliency and sustainability. So there's a lot that's happening in that field, and that cross-cuts everything we do. We're becoming more and more systems engineering, and we have to recognize that. Us old people, just until a couple of weeks ago, I'm in New Jersey. We were slowly opening up. I had lots of white hair up here, but it's hard for us, but it's really important. So, for example, if you are in the design arena of infrastructure, non-occupied structures, then you can become an Envision SP. And that's a certification program. And that helps you design more sensitively towards being more sustainable, resilient, and what's going on with our climate. And then on the other side is the LEED AP. That's for those in the building design area, in the occupied spaces. ASC also offers a sustainable infrastructure certification program. It's a certificate program. They're like 4 modules plus one you choose of your own. Like it could be transportation, could be geotech. There are different ones. So that's another thing. And I'm just talking about a few things within the same arena. But this concept's applied across the board. The other thing is, and this may be towards the future, just so if you're not aware, but ASC's Board of Direction is looking into a whole certification program that recognizes the fact whether you've met our body of knowledge. We have developed a body of knowledge saying, what does it truly mean to be a professional in civil engineering? So if this should go through, don't know if it's going to yet. I think the initial vote will really be in October. It could mean that in transportation or structural, that you can apply for the certification. It might mean examination, it might experiential. They're all different things that have to be worked out. But again, this helps distinguish you from other people. So like I said, be true to yourself, be genuine, find those passions, and then once you know what they are, go after what will help you develop those particular skills and passions and bring them into your career, in your life in general.
That's great advice and some great opportunities. Carol, what are your thoughts on additional training?
Well, I support everything that Robin said. when ASCE does have these certifications, and hopefully that will go through, that is a way to differentiate yourself. Or if you're doing project management, you may want to be a project management professional. That's another certification. Or just like what I did when I pivoted to learning and development, I got some certifications in learning and development to show that I have the expertise. So, and that differentiated me. But also I want to say, one way that you want to differentiate yourself may also be taking leadership opportunities within ASCE. Like, if you are one of, how many resumes, 100 or something. I know, like, because I've looked through resumes myself, I've also been like talking to other like managers who are reviewing resumes. You only get like maybe a minute or so. If you have something in there about, having leadership in your community, having leadership in ASCE, that is a really, really big differentiator. So when you're thinking about certifications, also think about leadership opportunities that would also differentiate you.
Run for school board.
Yeah, that too.
There's so many opportunities and places for you to take initiative, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So we're getting close on time, so I did want to ask all of our panelists to go ahead and maybe share 30 seconds or so of their closing thoughts. Pete, can I turn to you first?
Sure. I mean, I love everything that we've been talking about. I think just to even my closing thoughts, just to even close on the last, question, getting technical certifications and really being able to master our craft and get the credibility for that is very important. And I think that's a differentiator. And then, taking the leadership opportunities to be able to show, like, inside the profession and outside the profession, that you have that initiatives and you want to lead people. And leadership is my definition of, you have a positive influence over one or more people. And so that embedded in the organization, if you're taking that responsibility, is a big deal. But more, in our careers, in the consulting field, a doer seller is the model that's highly valued. And so if you're a technical person who knows your stuff and you're a professional who can speak with people, you have leadership skills and the people skills, that's going to stand out and differentiate you.
Absolutely. That's great advice. Carol, can I turn to you next? What are some of your closing thoughts?
Yeah. I happen to be reading a biography about Abraham Lincoln right now. And one quote from him is, he says, I will plan, and someday my chance will arrive. So whenever you're thinking about your career, you may not be able to plan it step by step for like 20 years, but prepare for that opportunity to come up. Prepare for that promotion. Prepare for that just great, career milestone. So if you just prepare yourself, when that opportunity comes up, you'll be able to like grab it. So I guess that would be my advice.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's all about positioning yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Joanna, I'll go ahead and turn to you. Can you share some of your closing thoughts?
Sure. So I'm just kind of writing down here. So I like what everyone said. I think it kind of culminates this whole begin with the end in mind type of outlook. So I think that's very important. I just wanted to really stress, the resume updates, the LinkedIn persons who you're going to slide in their DM after this conversation. You're going to have some virtual coffee with some people that you know and some people that you don't know. Reading and staying on top of your field in terms of knowing what the next move is. Be aware of what's going on globally and how you're able to impact that as well. Also dig into some of your skill set and how you can merge that with what you're doing now as an engineer to be more creative and to appeal on the professional organization level, but also to those who are coming up, so that you are creating and helping to create a pipeline effect of leaders through the knowledge that you have as well. And just think about your successes as well. Don't be nervous. Move to the next level. And I really like what Robin said. I think of those in my head as stretch assignments, not even assignments, but just a way to put yourself at the end where you're beginning with the end in mind by saying, oh, I want to be a manager, or, oh, that position looks great, wherein someone might want me to lead their firm. I've been looking around at different spaces and someone's like, yeah, I think you'd be great as a lead. And I'm like, really? Wow. But before I took that initiative, I was a little nervous in doing that. So I think, really being in that space of saying, I'm confident with who I am. I know I can do this. And I need to get more skill set, look at what I want to do technically, look at where I want to be as a project manager, as a leader, and really trust yourself and know that you have the capacity and the ability to do that. And you will be successful.
That's fabulous advice. Robin, I'll let you go ahead and close us out.
Okay. There's a world of opportunity out there, and it all can be summed up. What makes life successful? It's all about relationships. Whether it's your network, whether it's your mentors, whether it's your coworkers, whether it's your boss, whether it's your ASCE connections, whether it's what you do in the community. Life is about relationships. Value them, cultivate them, make them your own, and you will be successful whatever you want to do in life. And that's my last bit of free advice for today.
She's going to start billing us now.
Exactly.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you again for everyone that joined us today. This has been very informative, a great panel, a great conversation. So thank you again. I do want to remind everyone that you can continue this conversation on ASC Collaborate if you are an ASCE member. Feel free to post any questions or comments in those forums. If you are not an ASC member, please feel free to contact me about questions about ASC membership and some of the benefits that it does provide. I know both Carol and Robin shared about the great things that their ASC networks have really done. So please feel free to contact me if you have any questions.